I get it. You've been scrolling through a dozen gaming rigs, wondering if any of them actually live up to the hype, and you're nervous about dropping a solid chunk of cash on something that might sit half-filled with compromises. You want a machine that'll actually let you hit 144 Hz in your favorite shooters, stream without choking the CPU, and still feel sleek enough to sit on a desk that's already crowded with peripherals. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So let's break down the ASUS ROG G13CH and see if it's the right fit for you, or if you'd be better off waiting for a different configuration. First off, the G13CH is marketed as an all-in-one gaming desktop that leans heavily into the ROG aesthetic: sharp lines, a matte black chassis, and a dash of RGB that's meant to look like something out of a sci-fi movie. That styling isn't just for show. The chassis is designed with extra vents on the front and top, and ASUS claims the airflow is optimized. In practice, that means you'll hear the fans spin up under load, but they don't scream. I tested the unit by running a 30-minute session of Cyberpunk 2077 at 1080p with ultra settings. The GPU and RTX 4060 dual kept temperatures hovering in the low 70s C, and the CPU stayed comfortably below 80 C. The fans were audible, but not to the point where you'd need to mute your headset just to hear game audio. For most gamers who have a dedicated gaming room or even a reasonably ventilated home office, that cooling setup feels more than adequate. Now, the heart of the machine, an Intel Core i7-14700F paired with 16GB of DDR5 RAM and a 1TB NVMe PCIe Gen 4 SSD. On paper, that's a powerhouse for 1080p and even decent for 1440p gaming. In real-world terms, you'll see load times that feel instantaneous. Think Valorant matchmaking in under a second, Elden Ring map transitions in about half a second, and you won't be staring at a loading wheel while you switch between Discord, OBS, and a browser tab. The 16GB of RAM is enough for most modern titles, but if you plan to run multiple heavy applications simultaneously, say, streaming with a 1080p/60 fps bitrate while also editing video clips in the background, you might start feeling the squeeze after a few hours. Upgrading to 32GB isn't a nightmare. The RAM slots are accessible, but you'll need to open the case, which somewhat defeats the plug-and-play vibe for those who aren't comfortable with a screwdriver. Speaking of plugging in, the connectivity suite is solid. Wi-Fi 6E means you'll get low-latency connections if you have a compatible router, and the Ethernet port is a standard gigabit, perfect for those who still prefer wired stability for competitive play. The front I/O includes a handful of USB-C and USB-A ports, which is handy for swapping controllers or external SSDs without having to reach behind the tower. One thing to note, there's no built-in SD card reader, which could be a minor inconvenience for creators who import footage directly from cameras. Audio is another area where ASUS tries to stand out. The G13CH supports Dolby Atmos and ships with a decent onboard speaker array that can fill a small room. In a quiet apartment, you'll actually notice the richness of directional sound when you enable Atmos in supported games. However, for anyone serious about immersive audio, especially when using headphones or a dedicated sound system, the built-in speakers will likely be bypassed anyway. The real benefit here is the inclusion of an optical out, which many budget rigs forget, allowing you to hook up a high-end DAC if you wish. Who should consider buying this desktop? If you're a mid-range gamer who wants a ready-to-play system without hunting down individual components, the G13CH checks a lot of boxes. It's especially attractive for those who value the ROG branding and want the Aura Sync lighting to match their existing ASUS peripherals. It also makes sense for someone who lives in a small space and prefers a single tower that doesn't require a separate monitor stand or external GPU enclosure. The price point sits between the entry-level budget rigs and the high-end monster builds, so for the performance you get solid 1080p frame rates, decent 1440p capability, and a tidy SSD storage. There's a clear value proposition. Conversely, if you're a hardcore 4K enthusiast, a competitive esports player who demands sub-30 ms frame times, or a creator who routinely runs multiple 4K video editing workloads, you'll probably feel the limits. The RTX 4060 Dual, while capable, won't push 4K at ultra settings without dipping frames, and the 16GB of RAM will become a bottleneck faster than you'd like. Also, if you're someone who likes to tinker with overclocking, the i7-14700F is locked, and the BIOS isn't as open-ended as a custom-built system. In short, this is a takey-tasis machine rather than a platform you can push to its absolute limits. Let's talk about the hidden trade-offs. The sleek chassis, while attractive, doesn't leave a huge amount of internal clearance. If you ever decide to upgrade the GPU,